Oxford is the city of dreaming spires, with the world's oldest university at its heart. The city boasts architecture ranging all the way back to the late Saxon period, but it's a more modern building that is going to be our focus of attention. In 2017, Oxford University employed Asbestech to carry out asbestos removal and separate emergency works at the Tinbergen building. The building houses the Department of Zoology and Experimental Psychology. It was built in 1970 and named after Nicholas Tinbergen, who was a Nobel Prize-winning academic at the university. There's now a significant refurbishment planned for the building, and Asbestech was invited to carry out a trial for the removal of the concrete facade spandrel panels. Asbestech were asked to design a safe working method to remove the spandrel panels, none of which had ever been removed before. These panels have previously been stripped of sprayed asbestos insulation, which has resulted in the need to examine whether asbestos contamination is present, both under the panels and also behind the cleated bolts at the top of the panel, prior to the planned major works. There are around 800 of these panels around the exterior of the building, and it's important for the project team to have detailed knowledge of all potential hazards to ensure the health and safety of those engaged with the project. Our highly trained asbestos removal team received a full briefing on the project, including reading the written method statement and risk assessments provided. Under the close direction of our technical director, who managed the delivery of the trial for Asbestech, our team first of all created an operational exclusion zone to prevent unintended incursions to our working area and set up the required modular decontamination unit, which was to be connected directly to the enclosure, and tested it to ensure it was fully operational. We then removed existing services and constructed an asbestos enclosure around the panels to prevent any possible spread of asbestos fibers during our work. A pre-clean of the whole working area was undertaken during this phase to remove all existing dust and debris from the area prior to us starting the trial. Specialist A-frame lifting equipment was brought in via the roof during the enclosure construction phase to enable the safe movement of the spandrel panels by our team. The larger of the two panels was approaching a ton in weight. Once built, this enclosure was smoke tested to ensure that there were no leaks, and then placed under negative pressure as a further precaution. Throughout this stage, the enclosure was inspected by the on-site analytical provider, Riverside Environmental. Riverside also conducted background air tests prior to and during our works, and set up carefully placed air pumps for precautionary leak detection. Once the enclosure was deemed live, our team entered to undertake the work. Wearing disposable red overalls and full-face powered masks, the team removed the blockwork adjacent to the panel to provide access. Lifting bolts were drilled into the first L-section spandrel panel, which was then attached to the lifting beam. The team then broke out the holding screed and cut through the reinforcement bars to free up the lower portion of the panel. Following this, the team then slowly released the upper bolts whilst shadow vacuuming with an H-type vacuum, and gradually eased the panel out of its setting using a hydraulic jack, employing the lifting frame to move it out and lower it safely to the ground. The area where the panel had been situated was then fine cleaned by our team using H-type vacuums and tack rags to remove any potential asbestos fibers. Once the spandrel panel was on the ground, after inspection by our team and the analyst, the upper end was removed as potentially contaminated material, whilst being sprayed with fiber suppressant. A thorough inspection revealed that there was no contamination to the lower face of the panel. This process was repeated for the second, larger T-section spandrel panel. Care was taken throughout to carefully control the movement of the panels at all times by providing additional constraints to ensure that there was no risk of injury to our team members. All hazardous waste was removed from the enclosure in specialist waste bags and taken to our lockable skip for final disposal. Once the spandrel panels had been removed and the area thoroughly fine-cleaned, Riverside provided an experienced analyst who conducted a forensic visual inspection of our working areas as part of the 4-stage clearance process. Once this visual inspection had been approved, special air pumps were set up within the enclosure and a disturbed air test undertaken. Once the enclosure had been removed and a final inspection undertaken, a certificate of reoccupation was provided by Riverside Environmental. The project was successfully completed by Asbestech Ltd within the timescales agreed with the university and without any accidents or incidents on site. we developed a methodology to safely remove the spandrel panels and to identify any locations where asbestos was hidden, which was in this case only behind the bolted cleats at the upper level.